Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Alina Islam, and I'm a mining analyst here at Red Cloud Securities. I'm very pleased to introduce ePower Resources to you today, a graphite explorer in Quebec. For the webinar today, we have with us James Cross, CEO. James will provide an introduction to the company, including an overview of activities currently underway at its Tatapisca project. After the presentation, we'll take your questions live. Please send us your questions via the chat box and we'll get through as many as we can. Before we get started, I do need to mention the fine print. For ePower Resources, there may be some forward-looking statements made on this call. I would direct listeners to the cautionary note on page 2 of the ePower corporate presentation located on the company's website. For Red Cloud Securities, I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only and should not be considered a solicitation to purchase or sell securities or a recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note that this call does not take into account the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigations and seek their own professional advice before investment. Please see our most recent research located on our website for ePower specific disclosures. With that, I'll hand it over to you, James. Please take it away.
Hi, everybody. Just to introduce myself again, I'm James Cross, President and CEO of ePower Resources. We are a company focused on graphite, and at the moment only in the province of Quebec. The reason we're interested in graphite is an essential component of electric vehicle batteries. And actually, graphite forms the entire anode side of the battery, or almost the entire anode side of the battery. You've got the cathode side, which is the metals, and then you've got lithium sitting in between. And the anode, or you could call it negative side of the battery, is about 95% graphite. So the typical electric vehicle battery, for a normal sized car that could comfortably handle 4 passengers, is about 100 kilos of graphite. So in order to push this electrification agenda, the world's going to need a lot of graphite. Another thing about the supply situation of graphite is about 63% of it comes from China. And then after that, you've got Mozambique, Madagascar, India, and Brazil. Other than Brazil, those are all pretty far away from North America and Western Europe, where lots of electric vehicle battery manufacturing plants are being erected. So when we first started this company as a private company back in late 2018, we did it because we looked at all the material components of a battery and tried to determine which ones, if any, would face a supply crisis soonest. And the conclusion we came to was graphite would be the one. Now, we took this company public in January of 23, and we did it by direct listing on the Canadian Securities Exchange. We currently have a tightly held share structure of about 37.4 million shares outstanding. You can see the capital structure right there. And the day we went public, we had about 23 million shares outstanding. So, and some of our original shareholders who were funding us as a private company have continued to buy shares both in the open market and in private placements. So we know where the vast majority of our stock is held. If you're looking for 3 reasons to buy shares of ePower Resources, one, you've got the exponential growth in demand for graphite, because remember, you can't make a battery without graphite. It forms 95% of the anode material, and there is no known substitute. And the reason it's perfect for anode material, or 2 reasons, is it's extremely heat resistant and extremely conductive of electricity. I already went over our tightly held share structure, and our flagship property is located in the North Shore region of Quebec, close to the port of Baie-Comeau. So you can really wake up in a hotel in Baie-Comeau in the morning and by lunchtime, you can have driven to the property. So it's very easy to access. Everything but the last 60 kilometers is on a major highway. And then the last 60 kilometers are on what are known as Class 1 logging roads. We talk about the Quebec advantage a little bit because Quebec has announced a plan to support the battery industry from mine to market and have announced $7 billion as the amount that will go into funding it. Part of that funding, we know, is actually earmarked to build a 200,000 ton per year battery anode material manufacturer in Baie-Comeau. Now, the reason they've chosen Baie-Comeau is one, it's got, a great port there with easy access to other North American ports, the St. Lawrence River, and Western European ports in about a week. And it's also got ground access to, or ground transport links to the rest of the continent. The other reason they chose Baie-Comeau is it sits very close to what is probably North America's best graphite district, which is where we are. One other thing about the Quebec advantage is the exploration business is very well supported, especially in the area covered by what they call Plan Nord, which means above a certain latitude line where our property sits, up above that line, you actually get 35% refund of money you spend in the ground. So if we take non-flow through money only and say put $1 million into the ground, we're going to get back from the Quebec government $350,000. And we've never failed to claim or never failed to get a penny we've claimed. So the system actually works. I'll skip that here, but a little bit about graphite demand. There are a couple of powerful statistics on this graphic here and in these bullets. If you look at the graphic on the right, you can see the fourth row is natural graphite. It's a little small there, but 2022 production of natural graphite was about 1.1 million metric tons. By 2035, Benchmark Mineral Intelligence estimates the world's going to need 7.2 million tons. So roughly 6.5-fold increase in demand in really the next 11 years. And on the fifth bullet on the left side of the screen, in 2021, North American battery manufacturing capacity was 56 gigawatt hours. By 2026, it's estimated to be 600. Now, that's only a couple of years away, and that's 10 times what it was in 2021. And by 2031, they estimate 1 terawatt hour, which is about 17 times 2021 levels. So the world, and especially North America and Europe, are going to need a lot of graphite. Now, in North America, is there any? There's only one producing mine, and that's in Quebec. It produces less than 1% of global supply. So you probably need another 35 or more bigger mines than that in North America to supply what's already being consumed and the additional battery manufacturing capacity already being constructed and planned. And our strategy around graphite is what we're trying to do is capture an essential link in the battery supply chain around graphite. We don't want to become miners or manufacturers of battery anode material. We know those people who will do that are going to need graphite in the ground because there's just not enough graphite above ground to go around for all these industrial players constructing huge factories that absolutely must have graphite to produce anything. So we looked at how can we do this in the least capital intensive way possible. The conclusion we came to was just to do some research, secure a land package or land packages around places we know there to be graphite in the ground. Not necessarily a resource, but obvious graphite in the ground. Then our strategy is to delineate and develop a graphite resource there while it still sits in the ground and show that the graphite is usable by the battery industry and battery producers, and that it can be easily and profitably mined. And then we want to monetize that project to and essentially sell it to a manufacturer who's desperately going to need this stuff. And we have right next door to us in Nouveau Monde Graphite seen that happen for the very first time. You may have seen about a month ago, or actually about 6 weeks ago, General Motors, Mitsui, and Panasonic simultaneously announced equity investments in Nouveau Monde Graphite. And Nouveau Monde Graphite is a company with graphite resources in the ground, and their best deposit is the one sitting directly next to our property. So that trend of manufacturers buying resources in the ground has actually just begun. You can see where the Tetapisca property sits. I won't talk about the other one really for this presentation. It's a property on which we're looking for partners, and it's very prospective for gold and base metals. But Tetapisca property, you can see where it sits in relation to Baie-Comeau, just a 3-hour drive. And it sits in the Tetapisca Graphite District, which is the highest grade known graphite district in all North America. And we are the largest mineral claims holder in this district. The mineral claims, the rectangular boxes, are represent mineral claims on the map. This is a map of the entire district. And the claims surrounded in red and dark gray are the claims belonging to E-Power. And if you look at the stars, those are the known graphite resources in the district held by other companies. And the one in the middle, Lac Guéret, is the one that was fully acquired by Nouveau Monde from a company called Mason Graphite. They bought from Mason the other 49% they did not yet own. And 2 weeks after that, announced huge equity investments, $200 million plus US dollars from those manufacturing companies we talked about, Mitsui, Panasonic, and General Motors. Another map of the district here, really the same. And the color represents conductivity in the ground, which is one of the ways we find graphite. To prospect this area, what we do is we take the maps of the known conductors in the ground. And remember, graphite is anode material because it's so conductive of electricity. And then we can walk along the known conductor and look for places where the graphite protrudes the surface. And you can see some of the very big grades discovered over the obvious conductors. And just to give you an idea of how high grades are in this district, the typical graphite mine globally will produce graphite at a grade of somewhere between 2% and 7% graphite. So this district is a district in which we find generally much higher grades. You can see a photo of some graphitic rock here, and you can see the rock the man is holding there. That is obvious flake graphite. And there are two types of graphite. One is amorphous graphite, which is a fine, powdery, oily substance. And then the other is flake graphite, where you have more obvious looking flakes. And the graphite has more the character of a rock than a powder. And flake graphite is the more desirable type of graphite for performance in electric vehicle batteries. So it commands a higher price. And basically with graphite, the bigger the flake size, the more or the higher the price the graphite commands. Again, you can see this is a zoom in of the southern part of the property. And over the conductors, you can see some of the big grades discovered there, like 41%, 47, 52, 27. And then also here, we did a drill program over the summer. And again, you can see some pretty high grades here, 5 meters or 24% from surface. This area here, actually you can't see my mouse. So the area called Captain Cosmos is an area that we staked a long time ago, but had not yet visited. And we did that over the summer and found some beautiful graphitic outcrop and had a man-portable drill out there and drilled into it. And each of the 3 holes was 100% mineralized from the start of the hole to the end of the hole. The only reason we stopped all 3 holes was the limitations of the man-portable drill. It just couldn't go any deeper. And you can see some of the big grades there discovered with that. And this is just a outline of our target areas here, our known target areas on the property, the ones that are circled there. There's clear resource potential at the ones in the dark circles, and the ones with dotted lines are obvious targets that we want to go have a closer look at and see if those have resource potential as well. Now, one of the things we're going to do in an exploration program this summer is not just drill. We want to go to the property and take a bulk sample of about 30 tons from different target areas on the property and bring that to our partner company, Volt Carbon Technologies, for processing. And I'll explain that relationship in just a moment. The reason for this is manufacturers are looking for product. It's a guy in a lab coat who's ultimately going to make the decision on which graphite they want. And because a lot of our graphite sits at and near surface, we can go dig some up for them, get it processed, and bring them a 95+% concentrate. And they can run tests on that material and determine if it works for their battery manufacturing process. So even before we have a 43101 resource, we can get the ultimate product into the hands of manufacturers. So, why spend tremendous amounts of money drilling when the graphite's sitting right there on the ground? You can kick it. So we will drill and do intend to delineate one or more graphite resources, but concurrently, we want to get that material in the hands of manufacturers. A little bit about our board. Our company, actually, when we were private, the money was all raised in Europe, mostly in Sweden and Switzerland. And we didn't go public until January of 2023. So the day we went public, we knew where all the shares were. And still, many of those people who were shareholders of the private company have continued to buy in the open market and in private placements. So our board has 4 members, 2 Canadian and 2 Swedish members. Next steps, I already explained what we're going to do this summer, and I'll explain how we're going to do it and where the funding is going to come from. We recently signed a deal with our partner company, Volt Carbon Technologies, and it's an option for them to purchase 5% of the Tetapisca property. And in exchange for that option, they agreed to give us $680,000 for exploration on the Tetapisca property this year. So they've already got the money. It's earmarked for us, and we can spend it essentially from their account and put it in the ground at Tetapisca. So that you could say are at least a reasonably sized field program is already covered. And we don't have to go to the capital markets to raise additional capital to do it. Now, if we want a more robust field season, we could raise some additional capital in the markets, but we don't really have to because we've got that. Now, as that $680,000 is spent, during this field season, Volt Carbon will be issued 6.6 million shares of ePower. And they've already been issued 1.6 million of those. So there are 5 million to go. And so you could say the implied cost of that financing of $680,000 was about 10.3 cents per share. And the option at the end of 2024, they have the entire year of 2025 to decide if they want to acquire 5% of the Tetapisca property for $1.5 million in cash. So that was a deal that we think works for everybody. And the reason they wanted to come into a deal like that is they are a graphite processor and battery manufacturer, and they're in contact with electric vehicle battery manufacturers all the time. And when they show them products, the first thing they always ask them is, okay, but where are you going to get their graphite? So they wanted to show they've got a deep relationship with a company with graphite in the ground, and that's us. Again, you see the share structure there. Our current market price a few minutes ago looked to be 5 cents per share, which is a market cap of less than $2 million, about 1.8. So we've got 37.4 million shares outstanding and a very tight float because we know where almost all of that is. And the shares are at 5 cents. So there it is. Right now, I'll just go ahead and open it up to questions.
Well, thanks a lot, James. Just as a reminder to our audience, you can type your questions into the chat box at any time. So, James, you have a couple of questions. I guess, first of all, you talked about the bulk sample. Do you have permits for that yet?
Actually, those are in the process now. We're applying for those now.
Okay, so you would expect to get approval when?
Don't know exactly because Quebec has a new regime. So the permitting process is just changing now. And so we don't know exactly how long it'll take, but we're not anticipating anything crazy or anything like that. It's just there's more paper to fill in and go back and forth with. So if I had to guess, bulk sample, late June or something like that.
Okay, got it. So you talked about the agreement with Volt Carbon, but are there any other offtake discussions, potential offtake agreements?
Well, I guess we don't have anything like that. And at the moment, we want to actually avoid any binding offtake agreements. And the reason for that is that can scare away a manufacturer who might potentially want to either acquire us or just fund some exploration by taking an equity position in the company. So it's, if you're the procurement manager for, Volkswagen or Mercedes-Benz or Ford, it might be a whole lot cheaper to fund an exploration company rather than pay perhaps hundreds of millions of dollars for a graphite deposit, already known in the ground. So we don't have any offtake agreements. And at the moment, we're not really looking for them unless they're very lucrative for us, because that could scare away everybody else. And, Nouveau Mons Graphite, because they got those huge equity investments from those 3 industrial players, that graphite's now off the table. I mean, and North America only has about 8 graphite resources of any significant size. And a couple of those, for various reasons, might never see the light of day. So there's not much to go around. So really everybody in the graphite world knows about e-power. And so we're not looking for an offtake agreement at the moment. But we would take one for the right price for sure.
Okay. Just another question here. What is your burn rate and how much money do you hold?
Well, we don't have much money at the moment, which is why we're doing a private placement for $550,000. We just raised we closed a first tranche of 100. We're expecting tax refunds for a little over 200, and we're expecting those imminently. And the burn rate is probably $45,000 per month.
Okay. I guess last question, James. You talked about flake size when it comes to graphite. Can you maybe touch on purity levels and how that plays into graphite stories?
Yeah, to get graphite suitable for batteries, you need 99% plus purity, and you want to make sure there's nothing deleterious in the graphite that prevents achieving 99+% purity. And we haven't seen any issues like that from our neighbors, a couple of whom are more advanced and have conducted purity testing. But so we have been able to process, I forget the number, something like 99.95% graphite. So at the moment, yeah, that's something that's always on the radar screen, but we haven't really had any issues with it yet in the region.
Okay, got it. Okay, I think that's it for questions.
Okay.
Well, thank you everyone for joining this webinar today. James, thank you very much for taking the time to host this with us.
Thank you.
Just as a reminder for our audience, our next webinar will feature Aztec Minerals Corp, and that's tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern. Thanks for tuning in with us, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone, for watching.